Sometimes, right before everything shifts, your body feels strangely unanchored. The air tastes thin, your chest carries a quiet pressure, and the familiar soundtrack of your life seems a few beats out of sync with your heart. You notice the scrape of your keys in your pocket like it is news. The light on the kitchen counter looks washed and promising at the same time, and a conversation that used to warm you now lands like a note without vibration. Call this what it is: recalibration. This is not failure or stagnation. It is the field rethreading itself so something higher can take form. In terms you can actually use, imagine quantum superposition, that moment when a particle exists in many possibilities at once before observation collapses it into a single reality. That in-between is not empty, it is teeming. Translate that into your life, and you have a soul and nervous system that are briefly in multiple timelines while your brain waits for new evidence. Your rituals, your job tasks, old attachments feel off because the pattern that once held you coherent is loosening to make room for a new pattern to knit itself together. You might smell coffee and feel a nostalgia that does not belong to any memory, or hear a neighbor laugh and suddenly know a truth you cannot yet act on. Breathe. This is not an error signal. It is a signal of alignment in progress. Over the next minutes, I will map for you the clear signs that this is happening to you, the traps that look like opportunity but are sabotage, the practical breaths and choices that help the field collapse toward your intended outcome, and a small but potent practice you can use in the next 24 hours to anchor this change. Think of it like a rehearsal in a dim theater. The lights go up and down, cables are loose, and actors whisper cues that only they can hear. In scientific terms, decoherence is the process where a coherent quantum system interacts with its environment and transitions into classical outcomes. Here, the environment is your daily life, your social feedback, and your habitual thinking. Your nervous system seeks prediction and does not like novelty without data. Neuroplasticity tells us the brain rearranges pathways when given new experiences over time, but before those new pathways stabilize, there is chaos at the synaptic level. You will feel oscillation between clarity and doubt. One moment you have a vivid imaginal of what you want and feel electric. The next you bumble through a conversation with Emma and leave wondering what you were thinking. The practical translation is simple and hard at the same time. Slow down your observation. Ask, what is moving inside me, rather than why am I stuck? This is a laboratory of possibilities, where your attention functions as the observer that will eventually collapse a preferred probability. In my client group, people like Daniel, Maya, and Priya describe it as walking through fog with a flashlight and feeling small epiphanies attach like dew. In their voices, you hear the same pattern of sensory detail the field uses to whisper directions. You are recalibrating your frequency, and that requires tiny, steady actions. Notice 5 sensory anchors to ground this process. Feel the weight of your feet on the floor, the texture of fabric in your hand, the cool breath at the back of your throat, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the taste of air as you inhale. These are not fanciful cues. They are the literal inputs that help the brain create a coherent map when the old map dissolves. Name this process aloud if you can. Say out loud, "I am in recalibration," and listen to how your vocal cords vibrate. It changes the microfeedback loop. Insert small practical moves. A minute of breath counting 3 times a day. A 10-minute walk with no audio where you track 3 passing images without judging them. And 1 boundary you tighten with a person whose energy downgrades you. Sensory details matter so that you do not intellectualize the experience into paralysis. Smell something sharp like citrus, then something soft like warm bread. Let touch remind you that your field is embodied. These micro-rituals anchor the emerging pattern in neurons and tissue. At some point, you will notice mismatch. Relationships, jobs, and roles that once fit will suddenly feel like clothes that itch. Maybe your friendship with Lucas is tugging at you because you keep explaining things you no longer believe. Maybe Elena at work resists your new proposals and you find yourself apologizing for clarity. This mismatch is not a rejection of you. It is an honest signal that the field that used to support your identity is decohering. Think of it as a tuning fork losing resonance with an orchestra that has shifted key. Examples are concrete. A partner you love but who refuses to change habits might become a mirror of your old frequency. A job that paid your bills but dulled your curiosity will now feel like a slow drag on your energy. And social groups that once made you laugh now leave you with a tight jaw. You might taste bitterness in coffee that used to be sweet, or notice your skin prickling when a conversation goes in a familiar direction. This is the moment many people make a choice that appears brave but is actually avoidance. They either bolt too early or cling too long. The wise response is curiosity with limits. Ask curious questions to test reality. Say to the person, "What matters most to you about this?" Listen for 3 minutes without defending. Watch how your body responds. One of the most potent pieces of data you can gather in this mismatch is how your nervous system calms or spikes when you imagine a change. Your body is always honest. There is a real danger of sabotage during recalibration. Old coping mechanisms, patterns will reappear with new packaging. Anxiety will masquerade as productivity, and confusion will present as a need for immediate action. Resistance can sound like practicality when it is actually fear. You will be tempted to retrofit the past onto the new texture of your life. When that happens, pause and check 5 signs of sabotage. Impulsive certainty that rushes you into choice. Sentimental nostalgia that sterilizes the new. Seeking approval for validation rather than alignment. Numbing behaviors that feel good short-term. And telling a story about yourself that keeps you small. Here is a dialogue that illustrates the common dynamic. Maya says, "I think I should quit and move to Bali tomorrow." You respond, "How does your body feel when you imagine the move?" Maya answers, "My chest sings, but I also feel sick when I think of the logistics." You ask, "What would a tiny experiment look like instead?" Maya replies, "Maybe a month working remotely from somewhere new first." These exchanges are simple but powerful because they pull you out of heroic leaps into iterative testing. In another exchange, Daniel says, "I have to prove I am changed by changing everything." You respond, "Why does proof have to be so dramatic?" Daniel answers, "Because it makes the change visible." You ask, "Could proof be tenderness instead?" Daniel says, "That terrifies me and also feels right." Use these real-sounding conversations to practice curiosity, not caving. Emotional amplification is normal and useful. You will feel waves that crest and then wash away. Sometimes joy will arrive sudden and blinding when a small opportunity opens. Sometimes grief will come like a slow rain because part of you is relinquishing identity. Naming these oscillations reduces their power. Neurobiologically, emotion is a data signal that recalibrates synaptic weights. Your simple practice is neutral observation. Sit comfortably. Inhale for 4 counts. Exhale for 6. Scan your body for the place a feeling lives. Describe it internally with 3 sensory words like hot, tight, buzzing. Hold for 1 breath, then imagine the feeling as a color that softens on the outbreath. Repeat until the charge shifts. This is not suppression. It is the art of allowing the field to express itself without you being hijacked by reaction. Also build a cultural orchestra of support. Tell trusted people like Priya, Omar, and Sarah that you are in a transition and ask for small accommodations. Their presence is a reflected field that helps you collapse. On purpose, you will face a test that feels like the final exam of change. Old triggers come back as if to taunt you. The ex who texts, the job offer that looks familiar but leads to previous compromise, or the sudden praise that tempts you to trade integrity for approval. These are probability tests where the field asks if you will choose the old attractor or the new path. The instruction here is surgical. Create a rule for decision-making that is based on coherence, not comfort. For 3 days in a row, before making any decision over an hour of consequence, take 5 breaths, check if the choice aligns with your stated intention, and consult with one trusted witness who knows your emerging direction. The trusted witness could be Lucas, Maya, Daniel, Elena, or Priya. In practice, when Sarah received a job offer that matched her old identity, she paused, breathed, and asked me a single question. Do I feel like myself when I imagine this role? Her answer, no, saved her from a downgrade she would have regretted. When you pass these small tests, the probability distribution collapses toward your desired outcome. It may look like a quiet landing. That landing is usually a chain of correct micro-choices rather than one cinematic leap. Integration is silent but tangible. You start to notice patterns that feel right and small rituals that stick. The morning breath practice becomes less novel and more necessary. The people you spend energy on shift. The food you prefer changes. You begin to prefer intimacy that mirrors your new frequency. Signs of landing include sustained clarity for 24 to 72 hours, fewer reactive outbursts, and a steady tightening of boundaries that feels like breathing rather than wrestling. To anchor integration, adopt 2 practices for your next 3 days. First, a coherence note. Each morning, write one sentence that captures the frequency you want to sustain, like, I choose clarity and tender courage. Read it out loud. Second, a 10-minute presence ritual at the end of your day where you recount 3 moments where you acted in alignment. These actions reinforce neuroplastic changes and translate field intention into habitual behavior. If this description landed with you at all, pause, breathe, and know you are not alone. This experience is disorienting and fertile at the same time. If you felt that recognition, write in the comments, I am ready for my quantum breakthrough, and name one sign you are noticing right now, like loss of appetite, repetitive thoughts about a different life, or sudden curiosity about new work. Share one sentence so the community sees your map. When you post, you do 2 things. You hold yourself accountable, and you offer a compass to someone else who is already feeling the same tremor. Your words will matter more than you know, because other people in this collective field will read them and feel less isolated. In 3 sentences, tell us which name in this video resonated with you, or who you would call when you need a witness. If you want help framing what your tiny experiment looks like, write, I need a micro-experiment, and give one constraint, like time or money. I read the comments and frequently use them to shape the next lessons and live responses. So your participation literally rewires the conversation. Thank you for trusting that you are in motion and for sharing that motion with others. In closing, remember this arc. You entered here perhaps feeling empty or restless. Now you have language to name the state recalibration, a scientific metaphor, superposition, and decoherence, a practical understanding grounded in neuroplasticity and specific practices to move through mismatch, avoid sabotage, pass probability tests, and integrate the landing. Today, practice the 3 breaths, the coherence note, and 1 boundary adjustment. Leave a comment, I am ready for my quantum breakthrough, and subscribe if you want weekly guidance that pairs accessible science with grounded spiritual tools. Change rarely arrives as fireworks. It shows up as a quieter you who keeps choosing coherence. Trust the silence, trust the small experiments, and act from the frequency you intend to inhabit.